One of the greatest fears of a mother is that everybody's going on with life and you just hope that your daughter will not be forgotten.
It's burned right into your soul and into your heart and your mind.
I'm journalist Angela Kennecke. I lost my oldest child, Emily, to fentanyl poisoning in 2018. Emily was just 21. Her death was preceded by years of struggle, the struggle of addiction so many families face today. We were just 3 days away from holding an intervention when she died. We couldn't save her.
There's a term called amelioration of grief, and it means that grief takes time, and it will get better only if you put work into it.
In this podcast, I'm grieving out loud with other parents who've lost children and with those currently struggling with the monster of addiction.
I didn't want to go into withdrawal. It was like one of the biggest fears of my life at the time.
You were terrified of withdrawal?
Terrified.
Why?
It is the worst pain, illness, the worst feeling that I could ever imagine having.
I'm also learning from experts in the field on how we can and must do better to treat this disease of the brain.
We treat the addiction and the effect of the addiction, but we're not looking at the pain. The root cause.
Today, I have the honor and privilege of being joined by Marlyse Williams. She joins me all the way from Vancouver, British Columbia. Sadly, tragically, her 16-year-old son, Logan Williams, died on April 2nd. So she is just a few months into this horrific grieving process. But I met her through Facebook, through a mutual group that we both belong to, #NotInVain, which now has about 4,500 mothers who've lost children in the opioid epidemic. And Logan was only 16 years old, and he was a really special kid and well known actually throughout North America for his acting career. So Marlyse, thank you, first of all, for joining me so soon, just a little over 3 months after losing Logan. I really appreciate your willingness to speak out about it.
Thank you for talking to me, Angela, and all what you've done in Emily's name. I've researched, and it's just amazing what you've done. So, it's been really soon since.
Right. I would say I'm a little farther out than you are. I don't think I really started sort of my activism role in my nonprofit work until about 3 to 4 months, after I'd lost her. I think the initial shock is so overwhelming for all of us. Tell me about Logan as a kid. First of all, I'll have some pictures on social media and on this podcast of him and of you and him. And he was just a beautiful kid. I mean, oh my gosh, just those big eyes. And what kind of little kid was he?
He actually was a really, really awesome baby. He slept through the night after 3 weeks, literally 6 to 8 hours, just sleeping through the night, always laughing, always smiling, very, very, very funny, and a really easy baby. And as he grew, he was very popular. He was very confident and charismatic already at a young age. And he was good at everything. Like he just, whether it was sports or art or he had this way about him. And I think all parents feel the same about their children. But when he walked into the room, he had this big, huge smile, and it would just light up the whole room. But the best thing about Logan is he made you feel special. So he actually, it doesn't matter if you were what age, what race, he always made you feel like you were the most important person in the room. And that's a gift, because I don't have it. And it was a really very unique for a child to make other people feel so special.
Yeah, for a kid especially, to have that kind of awareness, for a child to have that kind of awareness of others.
Exactly. It was,
I think is
exactly. It was really unique. And he was the best thing about Logan is that he was so kind. He was super aware of other people in need, and was very sensitive to those. I had so many mothers reach out to me way before Logan's death, just thanking me for their, that Logan would spend so much time with their children. Logan went to a private school, a private Christian school, and he did very well. And there was, they had a buddy system, and they partnered you up with other children. And there was, like in the school system, there was a few children there with special needs, with autism or what have you. And he would partner up with them. And a mother came up to me after school and said, "Can I just say, are you Logan's mom?" I said, "Yes." She goes, "Can I just let you know my son is autistic, Caleb, and he's his buddy. And he not only is he his buddy, but during lunch hour, he spends time with him when all his other friends are saying, 'Come on, Logan, let's go, ditch this kid.' And he says, 'No, you guys go. I'm going to spend time with Caleb.'" And in fact, after his death, Caleb, who used to be nonverbal, actually is now completely excelled and painted a beautiful card for me, and with the Flash logo, and it said, "Some heroes don't wear masks, always loving Logan." So it was just, it meant a lot to me. And then another thing that really, at the time I didn't think it was a big deal, but when Logan was, 10, 11, 12, he used to say to me, Mom, let's go to Starbucks. And I'm like, "Starbucks? It's 7 p.m. Like, why would we be going to Starbucks?" He says, trust. He'd always say trust. So I'd go to Starbucks. I'm like, "What's this all about?" And then he'd say, "I need money." And I'm like, "Oh Lord." And then he'd go into the Starbucks and he'd grab all these coffees, and then he'd go around the corner and give them to homeless people and say, I'm going to pray for you. And then he'd give them a hug. And it was just so beautiful that he had this awareness that other people were in need. And that's kind of, I have obviously so many memories of Logan, because he was extremely funny too. He was super funny, always cracking jokes and making crazy little, like, constantly, like, punking me, so to speak.
Don't you think Emily was really funny too, and also very kind-hearted like that, and thought of others, and was always, when she was younger, trying to save the planet, save animals, save people. I think there's a sensitivity that makes people who have that kind of sensitivity especially vulnerable to addiction. So I think it's a number of factors. So I think it's genetic, can be genetic, right? So if there's some addiction in your family, it can be environmental, but also maybe personality wise, kind of just how you're wired. Because if the world is a really harsh place, and that was especially hard for Emily to take, the harshness of the world.
I completely agree with you, especially being in that group, Mothers in Vain. I'm noticing that all the mothers say similar things about their lost children, that their child was so sensitive and so kind, and almost taking on other people's pain, if you will. And I feel that that's definitely seems to be a general, it seems to be a common theme with addicts and addicts that we have lost, and that they suffer from this, not suffer, but they're so sensitive that maybe sometimes the world can be too harsh for them, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth to that. Tell me a little bit, because his death did receive international attention because of his acting career. Tell me a little bit about, he was so young, just 16, and had already had these kind of big roles, right? I mean, how does his acting career come about? And tell me a little bit about it.
Oh, yeah. So that's kind of a funny story. So when Logan was just before he was 10, we were in a mall, and a lady came up to me, actually from LA, and she said, "Hey, is this your son?" I said, "Yeah." And she goes, "Wow, he is really, really cute." And I said, "Oh, thanks." And of course, he was right beside me, and he's like, his eyes lit up. And then she said, "I'm an agent in LA, but if I don't, here's my card. I can't represent him because I'm out of LA, but you should really, maybe seek representation for him for acting." And I thought, oh dear. And so I said, "Thank you." And then we left. And then Logan kept bugging me the whole time, like for about a couple of months. Mom, remember, I think I should be an actor." And I was like, oh Lord, when you're 18, you can be an actor. And he's like, he kept bugging me and bugging me. And then I thought, I thought it would go away, but it didn't. And so he saved up birthday money, got his pictures done himself. So because I said, you know what, Logan, when you go to these auditions, there's going to be 40 other Logans that are cuter and smarter and funnier, and you have to be on time, and you got to be, I said, this is a very difficult to get into. You probably won't even get an agent. I was being so negative. And then, so finally got his pictures done, and I never did anything with them. And my mom actually said, Marlyse, you should at least send them in, because it's not really fair. You're not holding your end of the bargain, so to speak. So I sent a couple of pictures in to some of the top agents, just saying, hey, here's this boy named Logan Williams. Here's a few pictures, no acting experience. And right away the phone rang, beep, beep, beep. And I was like, hello? And they're like, oh, we'd like to see Logan right away. And I was like, what? And then the next phone, we'd like to see Logan right away. And I was like in shock, because I'm thinking, wow. So we set up the interviews where you had to have a real audition and memorize a script or a monologue and bring his pictures in. And he actually rapped for one of them, because he's really into music and rap. So it's pretty funny, a 10-year-old rapping. But and then there was actually kind of like a battle between, oddly enough, the top two agents really, really wanted him. So we signed up, and then a few days later she said, hey, we have an audition for him already. And she goes, don't, it's for a lead in a movie. You won't get it because but it's good practice. So we were like, oh, great. And then he went, and that was called Color of Rain, a Hallmark movie. And he got the part. So
wow.
Wow. Yeah. So that was kind of exciting and alarming and all new to us. And then about a week later, he had another audition for a reoccurring role in a series called When Calls the Heart, which is also a Hallmark, very popular show. And he got the part of Miles Montgomery. So it just kind of escalated from there, where he started auditioning quite a bit. And then he landed the part of the young Barry Allen in The Flash, which was, it almost put him to another level in the sense, because comic books, etc., Comic-Con, it's so popular, DC Comics, and The Flash is so popular, along with Batman, Superman, all of that. So that was really exciting for him. And he really enjoyed being on set.
Do you think that we always hear, about actors in Hollywood? I mean, I know you're in Vancouver, but Canada's Vancouver's a big area for film production and TV production and all that. Do you think that culture has anything to do with his addiction? Because we always hear about, actors going to rehab, or, becoming addicts, or overdosing, even singers and actors. And do you think that life had anything to do with it?
I love that question. Absolutely not. Logan he was a child actor. He enjoyed it. It actually made him be very responsible. It made him be on time, and it made him commit to something. And he hadn't acted for about 3 years. So he wasn't acting when he started, when his addiction became known to me. So I would say absolutely not. He told me towards the end of his life that his happiest times were acting, being on set, and he really enjoyed it because it came natural to him too. He was a really good actor. He never obviously was able to expand his wings fully in that field, unfortunately, because of his death. But he, towards the end of his life, 8 months before he died, he really cleaned up his act and got back with his agent, had auditions for Riverdale, etc., lots of things, and he was so happy to be back. And that's what he really liked doing. He was very much into the arts and music and writing rap, and that's what he was good at. And usually when you're good at something, you excel. But previously to what you were saying, I think what really made him vulnerable to addiction was his extreme sensitivity. Like we talked earlier, I feel that it's a great quality to have, but it also can be a painful quality to have because it can bring pain.
It had nothing to do with the stardom, the kind of, he had some following. And I think a lot of times we assume that if someone gets to be well known, that that they're gonna have everything at their fingertips, right? And they're just gonna start going out of control.
But in Logan's case, he was hardly, he was just getting some smaller parts at the beginning. He was not very well known at all. So wasn't having any of that. He actually was very shy in a way. He never at school mentioned acting. Most people didn't even know. So he didn't go around telling people I'm an actor. Some of the kids started noticing because he missed some school days, but he had a tutor on set. But no, he made very good friends. And nowadays on set, you have a parent that's with you. It's not like it. I understand where I am getting some response where I've had some negative feedback regarding his career, and people say, well, he should have never gone into acting, and I can honestly say it had nothing to do with it. It was something he loved doing and he was good at, and there was that the people on set, the actors, the cast and crew, the director, they were amazing to work with. And so there was nothing but positivity and really, really wonderful people. And there's no long hours either, like it used to be, where you hear these horrible stories from 30 years ago where people had to work, 15 hours and they're 8 years old.
I'm sorry that you're getting that pushback or negative feedback from people. It's hard enough losing a child without feeling like people are judging you or the choices that, you made for your son or you and your son made together. So it's so unfortunate that we have so much of that in our society. I think people just want to look for something to blame in order to think that this can't happen to them or their family. Oh, well, it happened to him because he was a child actor. Or it happened to my daughter because maybe her parents were divorced, or whatever the reason might, people just need something to blame. But he did start very young using, and Emily did too. Like, I think she started at like 15 with marijuana, which freaked me out. Maybe even about 14, I think. Was that the case with Logan? Like, how did he start?
Yeah. Well, you're right. Just to go back a bit, parent shaming, is so bad. Everyone wants to parent shame and say, well, she did something wrong. Maybe she's she was divorced or this or that. And I am so kind of really irritated and sick of being parent shamed for my child being an addict, because I look back and I go, what did I do wrong? I mean, I got a job that I could be with him and so that I could pick him up from school. I spent quality time with him. My parents have a great relationship with Logan, and he, you start going through all these things, and then I just stopped and realized, you know what? If love could have saved him, he'd be living forever. So I don't take that on anymore. I don't put that on my shoulders. And if someone is going to be so, this might be harsh, but ignorant to just continue to blame the parents, wait till it may hit them. I hope not, but it could hit their family. And as we know, unfortunately, you and I, that addiction can really hit, two-parent, single parent, sports, no sports, music, no music, and black, white, Asian, Hispanic, Persian, it doesn't matter. And as young as, like you said, to get to your other comment is, yes, it started with smoking marijuana, and I wasn't okay with that. And that was around 13 where I noticed his behavior had changed. There was a shift. He switched schools, and he was hanging around a lot of older crowd. I don't want to blame them, but he was hanging around with an older crowd, and he started smoking marijuana and skipping school. And I immediately was definitely not okay with that. And so as soon as that came apparent to me, I immediately started looking for help locally, whether it's counseling, whether it's, what can I do to help my son? Because I felt that this was not normal behavior. And all the, I know that, it's marijuana is legalized here in Canada, but I I'm sorry, these are children with not fully formed brains, and there's no way they should be.
Right.
You know,
I think we kind of think in our country and in your country, so both in the U.S. and Canada, we kind of think, well, it's just marijuana, and it's legal there in Canada. It's legal in many states here. And I always say it is not for the undeveloped brain, because it also contributes to setting someone up for addiction if they're using it before their brain is developed. That's a huge problem. And we can't, and you weren't laissez-faire about it. I wasn't laissez-faire. I mean, I drug my daughter around to counselor after counselor. I know you did the same kind of thing. And just looking for help and to try to figure out where is this behavior coming from? Like, why are they doing this? And it's not going to be good for them.
I do think that there is that kind of attitude about, oh, it's just quote unquote weed. And what I noticed too is even when I did take him to a drug and alcohol counselor, she said to me that, oh, he's fine. He's just a normal teenager. I'm like, no, this is not fine. So I actually was very desperate because I noticed that his behavior was just, it wasn't the same happy-go-lucky boy that I was describing to you earlier. And he started shutting down. And then as a parent too, you wonder, oh, is this just a teenager response or what? But I was more aware. I was very close with Logan, and I thought, no way, this is not going to. And I have a drug-free home. There's no drugs in my home. And so I actually ended up looking for treatment centers. And of course, there was nothing for someone of adult. Teenage treatment centers here are hard to find. And there's
and here too.
Yeah, and there's long wait lists. And so I actually ended up going to the States looking, and there were quite a few. Of course, I ended up having to unfortunately remortgage my home for $120,000 US, and I sent him to a residential treatment school in Utah.
How old was he at this time?
He was 13.
13. And so, but you're willing to do anything. You're desperate, right? I mean, that's how I felt too. And I sometimes wish, I think if I looked into residential treatment centers for Emily and ended up not sending her to one. But in the end, I guess it didn't save Logan anyway. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, I think it's so frustrating as a parent.
I think that's what's the worst is we're so, we haven't caught up with how to treat addiction. We're 20 years behind. We don't have the knowledge. There is so much unknown. And then there's always a new drug and a new drug and a new drug. And I think, and it affects the brain in different ways. And I think we're just playing catch up. It's like running uphill with two bowling balls and you just can't ever win. I actually spoke to a girl from this school, and she knew Logan. And she wrote to me after his death and said, I just wanted you to know that Logan was just the most kindest person there. And out of all the kids there, he actually told me, I'm going to get, I don't want to be this person. I'm going to do really well in life and help others. She said he had a very good outlook. But she also said, in her case, she was there for 24 months. And I said, wow, that's a long time. She was there from 16, 18. And she actually said, if I would have gone out, like Logan was there for 10 months. And she said, I can honestly tell you, if I only would have gone a year, I probably would have ended up dead. I almost needed that time, that longer time to understand. And then when I got out, I was almost past that teenage, like horrific teenage years where you're making some, sometimes some bad decisions, just being a normal teenager. And she's studying, like I believe she's going to be a therapist for troubled adolescents. But she told me, there's just no rhyme or reason. You try one way, you try another, and then that brings me to the topic of the conventional therapy, where it's, let them hit rock bottom or detach with love. And I have to say, with opioid addiction, the synthetic opioids that are out there, I don't think that's the right way. Hitting rock bottom, that means they're going to die. It's death. You're playing, as you're playing Russian roulette. The RCMP have told me several times locally that 82% of all the drugs are laced with fentanyl here.
I think at least 82%. I mean, I think they put it in everything because it's cheap and easy, and
that
deadly.
is so frightening. And as we know, they might not die today, tomorrow, maybe next week. So you're really, when they, and then a neurologist explained it to me this way, and I'm certainly no doctor, but she explained it to me that basically fentanyl is so horrific to the brain that it actually creates new receptors, and the only way to feed it is through more fentanyl. So so the brain chemistry, she said the conventional therapy, you can will it or pray it out, try and, the 12-step.
It's not a matter of willpower or of just being a stronger person or a better person. It's not about that. It's about brain chemistry. So until we can really get that in our heads, in our cultures, right? In our culture is very similar, yours and mine. Until we can, yeah. So what was it? Did it continue to go downhill after he got out of the treatment center, or did it get better?
So yeah, that's a good question. So when he returned after 10 months, he was 14, and he did actually really well for about 3 months. He actually got a job at a grocery store. He went to summer school. He joined a football camp because he wasn't sure if he wanted to try out football. And then about 10 to 12 weeks later, the same thing started up again. And I blame that as to, again, no support. So he left from this school. And when he came back, I was looking at, step one again, trying to find him, the whole wait list, trying to find him counseling, because then his, even though, I tried to keep conversation open, communication open, I always parented Logan out of love and respect, and tried so hard to let him know I'm here for him, and all, everything that most parents do. But unfortunately, some people are their own worst enemy, and he was on this path, and then he eventually, climbed down a rabbit hole, and he couldn't get out anymore as things escalated. And so during that time, those couple of years from 14 to 16, he also completed 2 other treatment centers, short-term ones, one for 30 days and one for 90. And the 30-day one, that night, he already started using again. And by this time, it became not just marijuana. It was more like Xanax. So he went from, Xanax and lean and perhaps small. I don't know all of what he did.
Right. It's not like he was going to tell you. So
I wasn't with him 24/7. And then he had, I believe, a couple of overdoses.
So do you know how Logan started doing opioids, or why, or how that happened?
That actually, yes, some of the reports say he had a 3-year opioid addiction. That's absolutely untrue. So what happened was, August of 2019, he was doing exceptionally well. He was still smoking weed, but not too much. And he told me he doesn't even want to do that. And then that's when he got back with the agent, said, Mom, he was picking out his school classes. He said, I'm done with this. I'm going to get clean. I'm going to change my friends. And I'm really, really wanting to move forward with my life. And he looked great. We were spending tons of time together. And then he unfortunately met a girl who, I won't say her name. She was 20 and he was 16.
Wow.
I immediately, as a normal parent, I went to the police and I tried to explain that this was a very inappropriate relationship. And they actually, imagine, in the station, high-fived each other, told me my son must be a stud, and laughed me out of the police station. So unfortunately, I couldn't do anything, even though I actually tried to stop it, because the minute he met her, the boy that was telling me he was going to completely change started going missing. And that's now I've learned she introduced him to, unfortunately, heroin, and that's how things escalated. And 8 months later, he was dead. And this is the second boyfriend in less than a year for this girl. So, and I don't blame her.
But don't you think like those outside influences, because Emily was very influenced by a boyfriend that she met at the age of 16, started dating at the age of 16. Well, by 21, she was dead, you know, and there were, I just think those influences, especially for maybe that a certain personality type, is just, it takes over. It takes
I
over.
completely agree. And I also think, you know, a 16-year-old boy, they're not, you know, a 20-year-old girl, that's a huge difference in, you know, your emotional uh just your emotional maturity and how. So it was always odd to me. I mean, when I was 20, I certainly would have never dated a 16-year-old boy. That would be really odd. And that's why I was so desperate to try to not dissolve the relationship, but certainly try to understand it. But I thought perhaps there was a legality that that could help me, because I knew the minute they met, literally within like I said, within 14 days, things started really, he started going missing, and that was the beginning of the end.
Don't you just feel like you've been like in the battlefield for years? You know, you were battling, and like I love what you said earlier about how if love was enough, you know, to save somebody, I mean, he'd live forever, right? Because we love our kids. We loved our kids. We tried everything under the sun we could think of within our abilities and our financial abilities and everything else. Yet both of our children died from this disease. And I just try to figure out what is the lesson in our story, our similar stories. I mean, they're not identical. There are, you know, things that are different, but so many things are so parallel. So what is the lesson here for the rest of the world or for other parents, you know? I know I'm not to blame. I know you're not to blame. And I know we're not alone. And we can take some solace in that, I guess. But it's kind of seems to me like, what are we supposed to do with this? Do you know what
Well,
I mean?
exactly like you said, I think in our struggle, when you're dealing with someone with addiction, I think the biggest problem too is the shame that we feel. You know, it's not like something you tell your friends or family because you're so embarrassed and you're so hoping it's going to go away. And I have to say, I don't know about Emily, maybe you can share with me, but Logan was so ashamed. He was like, Mom, I don't want to be this person. And especially towards the end, he started really big opening up to me, which is so sad because now he's gone, and he started really telling me, I don't want to be this person. Like, I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't want to be like this, Mom. Like, why am I doing this? And the shame and the stigma that you feel fighting this fight. And I did end up joining Noranon, and I've been, which is like a support, kind of 12-step, but it helped me know that I wasn't alone. There was other families there. I was the only one with a child. They all had adult children, but we all shared the same story, in the sense of the shame we felt and the blame. Like, what did we do wrong? You know, every time we shared, there was always the same consensus of, I don't know what I did wrong. You know, I don't even do, you know, people they blame themselves. And then, you know, I've had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, I'm sure you have too, of parents that wrote to me that ultimately lost their children to addiction. And they all say the same thing, that, you know, that the shame and of the stigma. And, you know, many parents would tell me, imagine they didn't even tell the grandparents why their son or daughter died, because they were so embarrassed, because they knew the grandparents would be humiliated. And I think almost too, when your child dies of addiction, you get treated different. I noticed, you know, I stopped reading some comments that I saw on, like, you know, certain gossip websites that were so horrific, like about just, oh, you know, who cares? He's a junkie, ignorant comments. And I think that we, you know, my goal ultimately, you know, initially will be to help stop the stigma of addiction. And I'm sure, you know, that's where I think not only our stories parallel, but where we really we both want the same thing. This is an illness. Like, can you, it's just, it's not looked at. I think the biggest issue is people think it's a choice. And I think initially when you start, say, very, very first drink that you have, or the first toke, it is a choice. But then, like you've seen in many of your podcasts and your writing, and we don't know brain chemistry and genetics. There's the type of drug, and now there's a good study that I just read. Sorry, I forget who wrote it. It's really good because it shows when you first took the drug, if you are feeling really, really down, and then you take, say, just whatever, you smoke some pot, and you feel euphoric and great, that's a really tell sign that you could become an addict very quickly, as opposed to if you're feeling already good and you have a drink or whatever, and it doesn't really. So they're saying, like, the actual current emotional state you're in when you first start using can create where you become an addict. There's just so much unknown, and I'm certainly not a doctor or anything like that. I'm just a mom, but I feel the stigma is so alarming, and it's really there's so much hate.
So much. And I really think that we mothers I think there's a lot of power in a mother's voice, especially a unified mother's voice. A lot of angry moms coming up and saying, hey, this thing is robbing us of our children. These street drugs, what's out there, and then how when our children get addicted to these drugs, how that's being treated. And then even after they die, the stigma and the shame that goes, the stigma and the shame they felt. And that we're supposed to feel. I mean, to this day, I have to say most people have been very supportive and very kind. But because of the job I do as a reporter, so I report the news about whatever the subject is, and I'll still have people throw my daughter's death back in my face if they don't like a news story. It has nothing to do with opioids or my daughter or my daughter's death, but it's almost like something people think they can hold over my head to put me back in my place. Oh, it's a very difficult thing, especially like because Logan was well known. I work in the public eye. I just feel like when you're in the public eye, that criticism and that scrutiny, it is just brutal. Where if we were to take those people as individuals and we were to examine their lives, I can guarantee you they don't know anything more than we do. They're not. Do you know what I'm saying? Like they don't have any superiority over us. It's just that they perceive that because of the stigma and shame around this disease. And we wouldn't do that to mothers whose children have died of cancer or diabetes complications or anything like that.
Exactly. And I really social media can be brutal if you have any recognition at all. And I saw that when I was reading some of the comments about Logan. Most, I have to say, were very, very caring and warm in prayers, but there were a few, even some of my own friends who are no longer my friends, lashed out at me. And I was just, wow, horrified that nowadays, when we actually truly know that this is an illness, this is a disease, it's scientifically proven with the brain, like I was saying earlier, especially with the synthetic opioids and how it affects the brain. And willpower is not going to, fix it. I think it's in our nature, though, that people always hide behind their computers or their phones, and they tweet something or text something or respond or message. And exactly like you said, if we examine their life, I'm sure people, who's perfect?
We're just kind of out there with our stories, partly because we've been thrust out there with our stories. I guess you could make a choice to not share Logan's story. Why are you choosing to share it?
That's actually a good question. For a long time, I wasn't sure if I should, because I was aware that there would be a lot of negative feedback, and I didn't want it to tarnish my beautiful boy's image of, especially even young kids that love The Flash or any of the shows he was on. I was very, very concerned about it, but then in a way I had this need where I felt if I don't say something, if Logan, I felt like I don't want my son to die in vain. And he created a small spotlight on his life from his little short-lived acting career. And so now I just felt that I am really wanting to use that spotlight and create a legacy and turn this, hopefully this at least create a conversation about the stigma, some of the laws that need to be changed, and this fentanyl that's on the streets, that it's a massacre against our children. I mean, you do realize, Angela, if Emily and Logan were born 30 years ago, they'd be living, and that's what's so scary is why are we getting attacked? What about the distributors and the dealers of dealing with this fentanyl and knowingly killing people? And it's just so mind-boggling that we're getting attacked for our character or our children's character, who actually were the greatest people.
You're absolutely correct. I mean, it's sickening to think, because we used to think these things were just a rite of passage, they'll grow out of it. Certain kids just lose their way, but they find their way back. But there is no time with fentanyl on the market to find your way back to who you are or who you're supposed to be.
You brought up such a good point, and that's why I have this big issue with detached with love or rock bottom, because there is no time with synthetic opioids and fentanyl. You don't have time, unlike alcohol, which is of course a horrific addiction, but it's a slower moving disease, so you may have the time to intervene. And I'm in no way saying alcohol's easier. I just feel that with the synthetic opioids like fentanyl and carfentanil, there's zero time. They will die, today, tomorrow, next week. It's more like maybe, and that's what's so scary is, and that's why I think these 30, 60, 90 day in and out rehabs may also not even, we may need a longer term, especially for young children like 19 and under, because their brains are still forming too. And it's like a whole different kind of way of how we need to treat it. And like I said, I don't have all the answers.
No, but you're correct. And what does that mean? We need the long-term treatments, because it takes a long time for the brain to heal from these substances like opioids, synthetic opioids, or meth, or any of those things. It takes 13 to 18 months just for the brain to start to recover. So, but we're not willing to put our money into this. And that's what it comes down to. It comes down to money, really. It comes down to what insurance companies will cover, what they won't. And I know your health system in Canada is different, but even so, it's money. It's like money for these centers.
Government spending, they decide what's important, and the majority of people don't want to deal with addiction because of the views and the stigma. And unfortunately, so then we get into the wait lists. So I want to be really clear, Logan died on a wait list to get into treatment. So that's just breaks my heart that he was waiting and he did not get in, and he ultimately died on a wait list. And that's you're waiting, especially actually in Canada, where everyone thinks our healthcare is so great. It's, you're waiting 12, 16 weeks. And like I said, it's not like I didn't already make a huge effort. And, I already spent I couldn't remortgage my house the second time. They wouldn't let me, I was so desperate, and I tried so hard, and like, I still lost him. And Logan wanted to get clean too. So that's what's so sad.
We can't be silent about what happened to our children, and we have to continue to demand better of our cultures, our societies, and demand better treatment. Because this continues to happen all around me. Every couple weeks or every week, I hear of another young person who's overdosed and died just in my community, and I've been speaking out about this for 2 years. Yeah. Sometimes it feels frustrating, like change is slow, right? Change is very slow thing.
Remember the lady in MAD who started MAD in 1980, look at what she's done. So we have to stay strong. And I think, there's nothing like a mother who's fighting for her children. We are like mother bears. And even though we lost our children, we're still fighting for them. And we are fighting for all the other children that still have some hope, and the families that are dealing with this horrible, horrible illness. And so I think we need to move forward. We have no choice but to bond together and move forward, and power in numbers.
Yeah, I agree. What do you want Logan's legacy to be? Have you thought about that?
I feel sad that he was so much more than what he's known for dying from. Everyone knows he died, but yet he was, like I described earlier, how lovely of a person, and he just walked into a room and lit up the whole room. So it's sad that way, but I do definitely, want to hopefully follow in your footsteps. It's so fresh for me, so I haven't had the ability yet, but where I love that there's a scholarship in Emily's name. That is just just the paintings and everything that she created in her life. And I feel that with Logan, I would love to do something similar, like an acting scholarship or a theater or what have you, and also raise money to help with. Ultimately, I want to create a long-term tailor-made treatment center called Logan's House. And I also want to change some laws where there is forced treatment for adolescents.
Like involuntary commitment type. Yeah.
Exactly. It would be called Logan's Law. And then here in British Columbia, unfortunately, we do not prosecute the dealers. And so that bothers me, because I truly believe this is drug-induced homicide. And
yes.
I believe my son was murdered, and I feel
he was.
Yes. And if Logan was, let's put it this way. If Logan was given rat poison, there would be a murder investigation. He was given fentanyl. He didn't even know, pure fentanyl he died from. And there's no, the dealer on the street, unfortunately, I have inside information, is still dealing, and he has killed 8 people to date.
Oh my goodness. Well, I am fortunate, and I know that doesn't always happen in the US, but that the people who provided Emily with the drugs were all traced down and have gone through court and have been sentenced in 3 cases, and maybe soon to be 4 cases to some prison time. So unlike what you're dealing with, I have had some justice, although I have to say it doesn't make you feel any better. But I do think,
but in my case, I'm, British Columbia, Canada, as we know, has very passive and liberal laws, and we, it's basically a haven for criminals, in the sense of there is just no, we don't have this law where so that really bothers me. And I want to I don't want to criminalize addicts at all. And
right.
For personal possession, I want to be clear, there's no, nothing like that.
But somebody who's dealing fentanyl,
this particular individual is, knowingly he's not an addict, he's dealing fentanyl, he knows he's dealing fentanyl, people are dying, he knows he killed Logan, and he doesn't care. And the police, I begged them, please, but they don't even phone me back. So I think that and there's so many families in British Columbia, because we have such huge overdose deaths, to the point, the most in Canada, and it is per capita possibly the top 5 in North America, and it's that severe. And fentanyl is huge here because of the Chinese connection. We have it comes in legally. We have an old postal law that allows 30 kilograms and under. You can't check the postage. So even if you knew you saw pills under there's nothing you can do. So can you imagine your teenager can order it on the dark web and you didn't even know? So there's
well, it sounds like you have a lot of work to do. It sounds like you have a lot of work to do up there in Logan's name.
It's going to be a full-time job. And if I can, honestly, when you asked about what his legacy, if I can help even just one family and one addict, I feel like Logan's death was not in vain. So that's my journey, is to try to really help others in a positive way.
I have a feeling you're going to do it. I just feel like you're going to do so much. And I just appreciate you taking this time to share a little bit of Logan's story, a little bit of his life, and a little bit of the struggles that he faced with me and our listening audience. And we're going to stay in touch and work together.
Thank you so much, Angela. It's been a pleasure. Well, I wish we were talking about something different. It's a
Yes, I wish we had I wish we had met under normal circumstances. It's tough to be a member of this club that nobody wants to join, but I'm glad along the way I get to meet people like you.
Me too. It's been a blessing to have such nice support, and really, unfortunately, I hope we don't meet other moms, but we will, and we have to bond together and band together to create change. So thank you.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. For resources for families and how to get help, just go to Emily's Hope at paintingapathttorecovery.org. If you found this podcast helpful, please consider giving us a positive review. Thank you.